Greetings and welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and this is Making Music Mystical. This is where we take a top 40 popular culture song, or pop song, and break it down. Now we're not going to totally parse it down to every word, but what we're going to do is we're going to look for clues to decipher what the song is actually talking about. And there's no actual way to prove, that this is the case, only by virtue of preponderance of evidence. So in what I look for to allow me to look at a pop song and say, yep, whoever wrote that song for real, I may say the actual band, but maybe they didn't write it, maybe a ghostwriter did it, I don't know. Whoever was in charge of the final version of that song being published as it was in lyric form and being sung knows what I believe is our prehistory, our concealed prehistory. And in brief, that history as borne out by the mythological record of our collective ancestry, meaning all the people who lived on the planet before us, regardless of race, culture, religion, creed, whatever. Collective ancestry, planet Earth. Those people recounted massive cataclysms, battles between the gods, and the capture of this world by this star and the extinguishing of our previous star, which would have been Saturn, and the birth of a new star, which would have been Jupiter, for them at the time. And how Jupiter lost its birthright, as a result of the conduct of other planetary bodies, most likely Mars, in between Jupiter and Saturn as they were feeding off of each other electromagnetically. So this is like the underlying story, and referentially throughout the ages we've been telling ourselves this story to remind ourselves of who we are. The people who are actually getting reminded are clearly the wealthy elite, because they're the ones who are paying to have these stories retold and updated again and again and again. Which is why, movies like Star Wars are brilliant in the fact that they embed within them multiple mythologies into this one story to remind us of a time when perhaps language wasn't a barrier at all times, that we could actually understand each other. There's all sorts of neat things about Star Wars that I find fascinating. So that's the rules. So now we're going to break down the song. The first one I wanted to talk about then, but you got the kind of storyline, right? And of course this will then reference these deities or these bodies in terms that are known in poetry. So for instance, as in terms of this star, it is known as light. It is known as a match, or Lucifer, right? Lucifer in Dutch is a match. And then of course outright, it's a sun. It has certain functions. Remember I said it's known as Jacob, the heel grabber, because of what it did in slowing and grabbing Saturn electromagnetically within its field of influence, to the extent that Saturn was excited, produced Jupiter, and of course all the cacophony of cataclysm that resulted as all of that happening together. That's our prehistory. That's that story, and I've mentioned it many times. I'll continue to talk about it. We'll definitely cover it. But in terms of music, this is the story that keeps getting told. And the reason I'm pointing this out is because, as I mentioned in the Modern Alchemist podcast on Baby, 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 music has always been first and foremost considered reverential, meaning that you sing it in praise of something else, like a hymn. So even popular music then could be having a double meaning, a double layer in reference to something greater. So with that said, let's begin. The song I have chosen to start with is Love Runs Out by OneRepublic. I chose the song because I really like it. It makes me want to move my feet. It's just a super beat. And because this song, from top to bottom, is a discussion of how our star, this is my thesis and I will lay this out for you, but the thesis is that this song is in fact a discussion of how this star captured us, what its role is in our life, which could be considered a savior role, in that it talks about working things out, which is code for atonement. Okay, when you atone for things, you work things out. So that's kind of a Jesus Savior reference. And for those of us who are astrotheologians, we recognize Jesus Christ as another reference term to the Son. Okay, literally it is the Son of God, El, right? Get it? Because it's star, just like the Star of Day. We've talked about this in other videos. Anyway, so it's the placing of the direct object in terms of the subject. I know I can't help myself. So, with this song, references then to lights, matches, love, stuff like that. Well, it's pretty blatant. So if you think about that for a sec, listen, go out right now. I'll wait. Go out, listen to the song. Here's the link. Of course, you can't really cut and paste that, but you could just do a quick search in your YouTube for OneRepublic, and go listen to that song really quick. And I'll just sit here. In fact, I'll put the lyrics up right here for a sec, and you can listen to that song for 3 minutes and whatever seconds it is, and then I'll come on back and we'll talk about it. All right? Ready? No, seriously, you better be listening. It won't have the same impact if you don't listen. Okay. Okay, so now that you're all upbeat, because it's a really upbeat song, I love that song. The video is pretty cool too, with the kids clapping and everything. All right, so let's talk about the song. He begins off and he says, I will be, remember my thesis, my thesis is that the song is in fact a song about the Son, and how this Son has atoned and resolved all of the conflict. Remember, I've said that it's a huge misreading that the book of Revelation has yet to happen. All of the New Testament is a description of the stabilization of our orbit relative to the Sun in the kingdom of heaven, where everything is pretty cool, right? It's all nice here. We live in the Goldilocks zone, and that we're safe. So that we're done. Like, we don't have to worry about Jesus coming because we're done. It's already happened. We're here. It's safe. Because when they're writing it, they're not talking about people or kind of narcissistic humanoid beings, you know, who are like, hey, I'm going to do this for the people because I'm awesome. So let's look at this song. The song begins, I'll be your light, your match, your burning sun. So think in terms of Jesus Christ. He is the light of the world, right? And of course your match, that's a call out to being a Lucifer, or this is a Luciferian song for sure. And your burning sun. So it's talking directly about that it is the sun. I'll be the bright in black that's making you run. That's another Lord of Light reference, and Lord of Darkness. Right? Who's the Lord of Darkness? It's the guy with the flashlight. Yeah, because he can cast the darkness aside with his light, right? If he has a torch or a match or a Lucifer. So, and then when he becomes a Lucifer, a bearer of light in the darkness. So he says, I'll be the bright in black that's making you run, and we'll feel all right, because we'll work it out. Yeah, we'll work it out, which again I told you is an atonement reference, meaning that you work out your salvation together. It's interesting because in Buddhism we learn the Buddha was cajoled by the gods that if he did not in fact go out and proselyte and teach Buddhism to other people, which of course he sucked at the beginning. It's kind of funny. Makes me happy because, you know, he's the Buddha and his friends are all like, what? Anyway, he didn't have YouTube. His reconciliation was done in behalf of the other gods so that all would be reconciled as a result of what had happened. There was a change in state. So, and that reconciliation comes, you know, when we achieve nirvana. You can go read up on that. So, and we'll feel all right, So, then it continues on. Remember, it's the sun singing this, okay? So think of it as the sun is singing to you and I. It says, I'll be doing this, if you have a doubt, till the love runs out, till the love runs out. And what is God? God is love. God is eternal, which means the love will never run out, which means it'll keep going. It's Mithras Sol Invictus, the unconquerable sun. So I'll be your ghost, your game, your stadium. Why? Because when you understand electromagnetically, then, that all things which are in the receiving zone of stellar consciousness, meaning that that's a larger being of greater consciousness from the standpoint that as we are electromagnetic and are able to somehow or another grasp ideas and think, just as much as lower life forms, or what we classify lower life forms like dogs, cats, gerbils, rats, birds, they too are able to consciously grasp their environment and make changes to it as they see fit. Imagine that on a larger scale, planetary and then think celestial. And that is the viewpoint of our ancestors. Now, in terms of how this plays out for us, that consciousness is then received by us. Now, I mentioned this in a video called Seeing Through the Eyes of Horus, and I talked about how the electric universe plays into this. Well, here's one of the things that I think is so telling. The eyes are directly connected to the brain, actually as part of the brain, right? They linked right into the brain here. And for a person to see if they are conscious, if their brain neurology is working, they take a light and they'll boom it in, and they look for a pupillary dilation effect. Now, the pupil is receiving electromagnetism, and in Seeing Through the Eyes of Horus, I talk about how stars, when they receive electromagnetic input, they'll contract, and planetary bodies, when they receive electromagnetic input, they expand, right? So the positive shrinks, the negative expands, and similarly the eye does that, which is why the eye is considered a solar reference, because when light hits it, it'll contract, and when there's an absence of light, it expands out, reaches out, tries to grab more. So that's of course in complete conflict to the standard model, right, which is exactly the opposite, which you would expect, all right? You'd expect that from those who would want to obfuscate the truth. So going back to this song. So, I know, right? We're talking about a song here. So, I'll be your ghost, your game, your stadium, meaning everything that's powering you, everything that's in you, everything that's making you work. I'll be your 50,000 clapping like one, and I feel all right, because I worked it out, yeah, I worked it out. And this then becomes, after Shiva, following his great dance, now sits in repose in meditation upon his mountain. This is Christ post-crucifixion, after he has been crucified at Golgotha at the skull, between four fixed constellations, which means that electromagnetically those fixed constellations are wired into us. And when you think of how that progresses out, imagine how many stars may have gone out during that one conflict when two stars duked it out in the age of Gemini. Anyway, so he goes on and he says, I got my mind made up, man, I can't let go. The not being able to let go, that's a Jacob reference, him being the heel grabber. I'm killing every second till it saves my soul. The destruction of time is an act of consciousness against the defining characteristic of eternity, which is that there's time in eternity. And of course, that is a reference to Saturn, right? The constant conflict of the input of the active into the passive resistant. I'll be running till the love runs out, and we'll start a fire and we'll shut it down till the love runs out. So you can see this song, I'm tempted to keep going here, just kind of walk you through, because it is a really well-written song. But I think what I'll do is I'm going to just let you guys, we'll do another one. Okay, so he says, there's a maniac out in front of me, got an angel on my shoulder, Mephistopheles. It's a reference to Saturn. But my mama raised me good, my mama raised me right. She said, do what you want, say your prayers at night. I love that so much. It's totally a Cartman attitude, and Cartman in South Park is a solar reference, right? So, what's Cartman's attitude?
Butters, you gotta learn to chill. Life goes by pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, and do whatever you want all the time, you could miss it. Yeah, well, I guess that's kind of true.
Anyway, so to the song then. I'm not going to actually go on through the rest of the song because there's a bit of repetition, but you see my point. In fact, and then of course it concludes by, I'll be your light, your match, your burning sun. I'll be the bright in black that's making you run, and we'll feel all right, because we'll work it out. Yeah, we'll work it out. Yeah. And we'll start a fire and we'll shut it down till the love runs out, till the love runs out, till the love runs out. Which is forever, because the love won't run out. So, yeah, this song is clearly about that topic. And a lot of these pop 40s are. When you start realizing that there are connecting terms of consciousness when you break the language down. This is the whole point of deciphering a thing. A cipher is a code which is known and understood broadly by a group of select people, and then is used to decipher what is encrypted. So in terms of lyric, it's a matter of understanding what the poetic references are. References to beings of light and fire, stars, salvation, working things out. Those are not references to anything other, really, than the gods, right? The things that we're talking about in the Modern Alchemist channel. So, I hope you enjoyed this episode. My name is Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist, and I'm going to keep listening to music. I don't know about you guys, but I love it. And when I realized that these songs actually contain this, they become even more fun to listen to, at least from my perspective, because the way I see it, this is part of our history. There's nothing to be ashamed of or afraid of or weirded out by it, because this is what our collective ancestors on the planet witnessed and have since passed on in story and mythologies what it was they endured, so that we wouldn't forget who we are. The big deal about origin stories, right? It's why Marvel keeps cranking out origin stories. It's because origin stories are important. They remind you of who you are by what you were. Okay, I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist. This is Making Music Mystical, and we'll be talking to you soon.